You think we always have movies to make. We don't. And if you catch them at a point where they need a movie, they'll make your movie. A lot of movies made that you think are given all the scrutiny and let's see if do we need this? Is it really good? Is it arty? Is it this? Who's in it? A lot of it. We have nothing for October. And this was one of those.
No way.
Frank and James will be back afterwards, but one thing, we'll talk a bit more about this afterwards, but the New York of 1979 is a very different place to the New York of 2011. And this film was shot nearly entirely in night shoots during the summer, which was like during summer hours, which is pretty tough as well. So just talk a little bit, just to kind of set it up, and we'll talk more afterwards about kind of shooting on location in New York at that time, in some pretty rough areas.
Yeah, I think it was, for me, it was not knowing what we were up against. I'd only been to New York once in my life. Oh, I didn't tell you? What? Anyway, gonna go make a movie. So we went off, and it was great. We were in the Sheraton Netherland, fantastic hotel, everything was good. And it was all about, how do we make this movie? You obviously could never make this movie today. In those days, there were no guns, when I look back. It was fists and maybe a knife was the worst thing that you could encounter. But it was tough. These areas we shot in really bad areas. And we kind of didn't know. It was kind of like, oh, we're making a movie, they're going to shut off that street and everything. And it was really, the making of the movie sort of became like the story of the movie. We got to work our way to Coney Island. And that's what we did. And, we had a lot of hurdles, a lot of obstacles, which we'll tell you about a little later, but it really became sort of the whole feel and tone of the movie the making of the movie was the same battle as the Warriors were having getting home.
It was almost as rough as Xanadu.
We're going to switch the second half of the double bill to Xanadu. Now, just because Walter, I know you're going to go, I know you don't want to speak, but I'm going to ask you a couple more questions. But just talk a little bit, I know you said that like sort of the influence of this movie, like I said, has gone beyond just other films in terms of, like music videos. I think at least 2 Michael Jackson videos have been, inspired by the Warriors, video games, fashion, and I think a lot of that comes down to the sort of the design and the, because it's whilst it's kind of shot in real areas, the it's a very stylized expressionistic film. Even the way you shoot the action sequences, like all of your action, but in this there's like you've got wipes and whip pans and slow motion and it's.
We threw it all in.
And as we talked a bit about on Monday, you're a big comic book fan as a child.
I was, and I'm now a graphic. They've grown up to be these graphic novels. I like them as well. But it is. I kept going back to Xenophon and the March of the 10,000, which is not just history but literature. There is nothing in the film that isn't in some way a take on something that didn't happen several thousand years ago. I do believe that good storytelling is a sense of discovery of the familiar by the audience. You've got to present it in some new way, but and it was very much meant to be something enjoyed. I mean, it's a savage story, but it's very positive, and it was meant to be, in its way, romantic. And now, Mr. Gordon will say,